Thank you, sir. So we move ahead and go with our next speaker. Um, and before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to quote, I want to be remembered as someone who put India on the scientific map of the world in terms of large innovations. I want to be remembered for making a difference to global healthcare. And I want to be remembered as someone who did make a difference to social economic development in India. The tag of being the richest women of India bothers her. She wants to be remembered not only for the fortune she built, but the sheer hard work she didn't shy away from putting in to reach the pinnacle of success, and none other than Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, the inspiring founder, executive chairperson of Biocon Limited, is a woman with remarkable dignity and poise. She has a philosophy of building affordable innovations, renowned for her philanthropic measures. She believes in giving back to the society, and she was recently in news for pledging to divert half her wealth towards the development of infrastructure required to combat the deadly disease cancer. So with this, I request Dr. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw to give us a keynote address. Over to you.
Thank you, Shalini, and hello, Professor Sharma. It is a great pleasure and a privilege to be in this particular session, and thank you for such a inspiring, introductory speech that you gave. I just want to take off from where Dr. Sharma left. I think he has been a great empowering force for women in science, and I must thank him for all that he's doing to make sure that women get their rightful place in science. But you also know that when you look at the statistics, I think the number of women in STEM are too few and far between when it comes to finally applying their knowledge that they have gained over the years. If you look at the statistics, we know that in many, many parts of the world, as Professor Sharma said, you find a large number of women students when it comes to science and technology, and it is only increasing. In fact, 2/3 of the developing economies of the world said that more and more women are entering science. But the problem is that women are studying science more and more, but they are not doing science after they finish their education. And they are not pursuing scientific research as a career. So we need many more women to pursue this scientific career path, is what I feel. If you look at it, just look at the research scene in India. Only 2 in 10 researchers in India are women scientists. That's not at all good. We need to make it 50-50. If you look at the report on women scientists in India, 30% of engineering students are women, which is a great statistic to have. The number is not 30%, it is much, much lower. Okay. Then when you look at the medical students, 45% of medical students are actually women in India. But then look at the number of women who actually are there as medical practitioners in AIIMS, very, very few. So I think we need to understand that unless we start populating these spaces in larger numbers, we will still be having this discussion 10 years from now. As a scientist entrepreneur, I must tell you that once I had some sort of missions that there were some kind of objectives and goals that I had when I started Biocon. So I said, as a woman scientist who's starting as an entrepreneur, I want to encourage more and more women to pursue a scientific career. Today, I'm really delighted that 40% of my scientists in our R&D are women. Okay. However, when I look at the number of engineers whom I can actually use in our manufacturing operations, I hardly have a few women that I can talk of. That's not good enough. So when I look at even our entire ecosystem, whether it's medical affairs, clinical research, here women should be there. And we must have strong representation of women. But even in my case, I've not been able to find enough women who can play these roles. So I just think that really we need to think about this whole challenge that we have as women in science to do more. You know, Professor Sharma very rightly said, we have enough role models to get inspired in our country. You know, whether it is the boldness and the intrepidation with which Anandi Gopal Joshi became the first medical graduate from the US, or whether it is Janaki Amal, who basically rejected a planned marriage to follow her passion for botany and hybridized India's sugarcane varieties into a plant sweet enough to grow into 30 million ton a year industry. She actually is the original architect of our sugar industry. Don't forget that. I mean, you must remember these kind of inspirational women scientists who actually have built modern India for us. Okay. Then you look at Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. She was not only the former director of ICMR, but today she is the chief scientist of WHO. And you know, WHO today lacks a lot of credibility on the world stage. But Professor Swaminathan brings credibility to WHO. She is the one who is salvaging the credibility of WHO, don't forget. And she is an outstanding scientist. She's a very thoughtful leader. She is somebody everyone respects because she thinks about the pandemic in a very calibrated way. And every time I talk to her, I feel she's the only one making so much sense of this pandemic and the science of this pandemic and the way we manage the pandemic. So people respect her. She is a loud, forceful, influential voice at the time of this pandemic, and we should be very proud of her. Then if you look at, as Professor Sharma said, our whole ISRO team is full of stars, women stars. You know, you've got Tessie Thomas, who has been christened the Missile Woman of India. Okay? You look at Mangala Mani, she's been christened the Polar Woman of ISRO because she actually was the first woman scientist from ISRO to spend more than a year in the Antarctica, you know, where she went as a part of a 23-member team in 2016. Then you look at Ritu Karidhal. She is called the Rocket Woman of India. So you've already got these various stars from ISRO. And what is great about ISRO is that they've inspired more and more and more women to partake in this whole satellite space and this whole missile and rocket space, right? So I think we must understand that it's not impossible. I mean, who would have thought that space research would have so many women stars? I don't think anyone would have thought that, right? But they are there. And because of them, more and more women scientists are joining ISRO. So I think this is what we need to do. We need to create these hubs of excellence, of scientific excellence, which are fostering women and celebrating women so that more and more women come and join these kind of hubs of excellence. Dr. Gagandeep Kang, first woman to be elected as a fellow of the Royal Society. How proud is that? You know, please understand, it's not easy to be elected as a fellow of the Royal Society. Professor Sharma knows that. And for her to be elected is a matter of great pride for all of us. Okay. She is another very thoughtful scientist. Okay. She is an immunologist. She also understands epidemiology very well. So these are the kind of leading lights we have as women scientists. Look at Chandirama Saha, is a biologist and the first ever woman president of the Indian National Science Academy. That's another very prestigious position to hold. Then I know that when I look at our own field of biotechnology, we have so many people who are all women. Okay, whether it is Renu Swarup, whether it is Alka Sharma, whether it is Kavita Singh, you know, all these women are actually laying out policies, helping this sector to grow. I mean, I know that during COVID, DBT has played such an important role to foster innovation, to encourage entrepreneurship, to support startups. And all this is coming because people like Renu Swarup and her team are wanting to make a difference, and they are supporting a lot of entrepreneurship, and believe me, she's very proud of the women who are running these businesses. Now, even in the vaccine space, you know, we must not forget that Mahima Datla is also a formidable force when it comes to vaccines, because Biologically is also a large vaccine producer, and she's also developing a vaccine. And all these people are making a difference. Today I was interviewed by Financial Times, and they asked me a question. They said, why aren't there enough self-made women entrepreneurs in India? And I said, well, I think the reason is that the financial ecosystem is not very kind to women. I think the financial ecosystem favors men more than women. The financial ecosystem feels, oh, women don't have it in them to take big risks. They're not ambitious enough. They don't know how to be aggressive in a commercial world. All that is absolutely wrong. I have proved that that is absolutely wrong. You know, I have been the biggest risk taker in the biopharma world. I think nobody took the kind of risks I took to invest and build such a big biopharmaceutical company, right? I also was very bold. I don't think I can be called somebody who's not ambitious. I don't think I can be called somebody who's not a risk taker. I don't think anybody can call me somebody who doesn't understand markets and commercial opportunities, right? So I think we must forget about how the world sees us. I think we must make our own destinies ourselves. That is what I really believe in terms of women and what we need to do. Now, when you look at, you know, how women are contributing to healthcare, let me tell you that the influence that women exert on healthcare outcomes is best encapsulated by a Lancet Commission on Women and Health report, which found that women contribute approximately $3 trillion to healthcare globally, or nearly 5% of global GDP. So, but the problem is that while women play such a vital role in global healthcare, in terms of the workforce as nurses, midwives, community health workers, and doctors, they also make informal contributions by giving care at home. The report also found that 80% of healthcare decisions for the family are made by women. And if this is valued, then this unpaid contribution can account for up to 2.35% of global GDP, or $1.5 trillion. So you can see that if women did not, you know, form this workforce that we are talking about in the world, our healthcare would be in abysmal shape. So we don't realize the value and the contribution of women just to healthcare. If we didn't have nurses, if we didn't have midwives, if we didn't have these ASHA workers, how do you think we could have coped even with COVID, you tell me? This is what we have to recognize as women. This is the kind of contribution women are making to the global healthcare ecosystem, and we're not recognizing it and celebrating it enough. We just take it for granted. We basically subjugate women in the healthcare workforce as being taken for granted. right? And that's what we need to really make sure, that we are now talking about nurse practitioners, and yet the medical system is not allowing that. Let me tell you, nurse practitioners can be as competent as an MBBS doctor. That's how significant that opportunity is for a country like India. Let's look at what else do we need to do. Indian government actually is supporting women in STEM in a big way. The Department of Biotechnology has made special efforts to encourage women scientists, okay, to pursue these careers. BioCare, which is one such scheme, allows women researchers, both employed and unemployed, to take up research. DBT has also issued or instituted special awards to recognize excellence in research and innovation by women scientists. They have an award called the Janki Ammal National Women Bioscientist Awards. The Biotech Industry Research Assistance Council, BIRAC, also supports women entrepreneurs. BIRAC has 3 incubators which specially focuses on women entrepreneurs. And nearly 10 to 15% of startups supported are by women. BIRAC also has a special challenge for women entrepreneurs to help them take up entrepreneurial research forward. And the Department of Science and Technology and the Science and Engineering Research Board have an array of schemes and awards to encourage women in science. So there's no dearth of these kind of schemes and awards and grants. And women scientists in STEM must take advantage of all of this. So there's no dearth of that support. But what I feel is it's up to every one of us to do science, to apply science, to leverage science. There's no point just studying science and not putting it to good use. I think that's what the challenge is for all of us who are women, who are in large numbers when it comes to degrees, but in very few numbers when it comes to careers. That's the gap we have to fix. So, studying science and doing science, that's where really the funnel effect takes place. And we have to make sure that we break that effect and make sure that we have a level playing, leveling of the opportunities for men and women. And that's where I think where Professor Sharma has played such an important role, not only in sensitizing the employers about hiring women, but also sensitizing women about pursuing greater challenges. I think that's what we should really focus on. I think we don't need to really keep on looking for inspirational role models because we have enough. We have so many inspirational role models, whether it is in medicine. Look at the way the Reddy sisters have taken on their responsibilities and are driving the Apollo institution to another level. They have also shown a lot of grit and determination to do that. Okay. So whether it is medicine, whether it is engineering, yes, in engineering, we have very few women engineers, but now look at in the engineering field also. Look at Nivruti Rai. She is heading Intel in India. She is driving their innovation ecosystem in India. Okay. So there's no lack of, examples. You look at, a big organization like Accenture has appointed Rekha Menon as the head of the organization. So there are enough examples. And I can tell you, whenever I meet these young, bright engineers and software engineers, I have full of admiration for them. Look at NASSCOM is headed by Debjani Ghosh. And believe me, she's an outstanding leader for NASSCOM. Everybody respects her. So I don't think we should just keep making excuses and look for role models. There are so many role models for us to look at. But it stops with us. It stops with every one of us, every one of you. Every one of you who has studied science, you have to apply that science, use that science, research that science, and build this country into a science-led country. That's the challenge I think we all need to throw at ourselves. I truly meant it when I said I want to put India on the map of the world when it comes to science and innovation, because I really think we have the talent, we have the capabilities, we need the temper to do that in a global way. We need to do that with a view of delivering excellence in what we do. I always say, we lack self-belief in our own science. We are constantly looking to the outside to tell us about how good science is or how good our science is. I know that much of what we are doing in our company is excellent, but I don't have people who can, I still, we still look for endorsement from the outside, because we don't have a system in place to recognize the importance and the greatness of the science we are pursuing. I brought so many drugs to the Indian market, novel drugs, but our doctors don't believe in our novel drugs. They prefer to believe blindly in products being imported into the country. So until we start believing in ourselves, we will never excel. And the same goes for women. Unless we believe in ourselves, we will not excel. So that's the challenge I'm throwing at you. And what I thought I'll do is, I've been talking for some time, but I think it's a much better format when you people ask me questions and I answer those questions. So maybe we'll break into a Q&A, if I may.
Okay, yes, Professor Dr. Kiran, there are many more questions. Our people, our audiences are also on YouTube, and here also there are some audiences, and I request them to post their questions in the chat box. So thank you so much for such a wonderful, inspiring talk through your own experiences. And I read this very inspiring quote from you, and it is that one of my objective when I started Biocon was to make sure that I create a company for women scientists to pursue a vocation. I think today's women, they are, you rightly pointed out that they are doing career, but they are not doing actual science. They are having degrees, but nobody is actually in the field. So when you're this famous quote, we follow, I think it is going to be fantastic. So, and the examples that you gave, that there are Anandibai Joshi, Soumya Swaminathan, Dr. Gagandeep Kang, and Debjani Ghosh, and many more. So that absolutely, there is no doubt that there is no dearth of support, or there is no dearth of lack of role models. We already have it. So we women have to take, and we have to think whether we want to really do it. So we have one question from Manisha Patil, and she asked, how in your own life you got inspired, and that is how you said that you took so many chances and you took so many courageous steps. So what was your role model, or how did you got inspired?
At every step of my life, I have been inspired by something. And when I started Biocon, what inspired me was the opportunity to replace chemical technologies with enzyme technologies. I felt that, many of the chemical technologies that were used in industry were polluting and very crude technologies. For example, starch processing to convert to a vat, you would heat it up to a very high temperature, add very corrosive acid, and then break it down into glucose. And the yield of that used to be less than 90%, if you were lucky. Whereas I saw that, my God, you can do the same process by using enzyme technologies which are far more eco-friendly. You don't need to use such polluting technologies like chemical technologies. You can actually do it by using enzymes that can do the same job much more efficiently, and you could actually get very, very pure glucose with an efficiency of almost 96 to 98%. I felt that was such a nice way of looking at enzyme technologies, and from there I started developing so many enzyme technologies just looking at reducing pollution. Now, the point is that at that time when I was developing enzyme technologies, there was no concept of environmental sustainability, but it was an idea that really grabbed me at that time. Then when I moved into biopharmaceuticals, my purpose, my inspiration came from the fact that, India is the diabetes capital of the world, and we are importing all our insulin. And recombinant human insulin is being imported, but hardly anyone can afford it because most people are using animal insulin. So I said, I've got to do something about this. So I started developing a technology for recombinant human insulin so that I could make a difference and make it affordable. From that, I also got then inspired by the fact that, look, cancer is now being treated by life-saving biologics, by antibodies, which is a new way of treating cancer. And yet we were importing everything into India. And that was so expensive that very few patients could afford it. So again, I said affordable innovation is what I want to focus on, to make a difference to all these patients who need such products. So that's where I draw my inspiration out of something which I feel is there is inequity in our society, there is inequity in the world, there is inequity between the developed and developing economies. How do I make that difference? How do I correct that inequity? That's where I get a lot of my ideas and inspiration from.
Wow. So there is another question from NC Irfani, and she asked, the women who are in science and technology should be star. However, most of the men in science and technology are not even a candle, and these men do not allow women to enter and stay in science.
I think women have to be bold, they have to be daring, and they have to make themselves, their presence felt. I think science is agnostic to gender. And only what will speak for you is your work, your research, your science. And I gave you that example of Gagandeep Kang. It's her science that speaks. If you look at a lot of the women scientists, it's their science that speaks, their research that speaks. So I don't think that's an excuse. I think men will only take advantage of women who are weak and who don't believe in themselves.
Oh, thank you so much. There is another question from Dr. Swarnalata, and she asked, the boldness of a woman is generally taken as arrogant, and how can we as a women come up from this situation?
That's because you allow men to look at you like that. I think if you are bold, be bold. What's wrong? Why should you worry about how people look at you, whether you're aggressive or not? I mean, by the way, aggression, very often I've been told that women are not aggressive enough to do business.
Yeah.
So why are you worried about those comments? Don't worry about what people tell you. Believe in yourself and do what is right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So, there is one more question from Dr. Vandana Patrawale. Do you have any specific advice for women faculty in universities to set up or to take up an entrepreneurial role?
I mean, I cannot give you specific answers, but I think you need to find out where these opportunities are. And whatever those opportunities are, which excite you, is something you should pursue. Because it is too generic a question you're asking. Because, there are many opportunities, but it has to interest you.
Okay. There is another question from Shubhini, and she asked, Shubhini from Lucknow, and she asked, how can industry help the women in science for translational research?
Well, I think first and foremost, translational research is very important, and I've always advocated that every medical center, institution, or research institution must have a very serious focus on translational research. And I think there is a huge opportunity to really, like for instance, COVID right now is a great opportunity for translational research because we are discovering so many things about the way this virus works. And when you understand how the virus works, there will be enough opportunities to translate that knowledge into treatments. So I think that's what a lot of medical researchers and scientific researchers should look at. If you're an immunologist, if you're a pulmonologist, if you're any doctor that's really specialized in this space should be looking at it that way.
Yeah, there is one more question which is asked by Professor Preeti Saxena. What is the financial load on industries due to this new enzyme-based process?
Actually there's a financial benefit, because when you replace a chemical technology with an enzyme technology, what you are not factoring in is the environmental cost of not doing that. Okay, I mean, I know that when I was trying to market my enzymes, people never used to understand. When I used to argue with them and I used to say, listen, what is your environmental cost of pollution, of treating pollution, of treating effluent? Are you factoring that? So what is the environmental damage that is being caused by pollution? That is the way we have to look at these costs. So if you can prevent environmental damage, I think it's a huge, huge benefit to human society.
Yeah, there is one more question. Again, it is on the same line of previous. It is asked by Sushma Bisht, and she asked from where you got the courage to start your journey as an entrepreneur, which is considered as insecure profession, and most of the time women lack that. They do not want to take that courageous step. So where did you get that
I
courage?
think women, I think it's in your head. You're trapped in a mindset that says women are not courageous. There are many women who have shown that courage. I'm one of them, but I think many, many women do show courage. It's because any woman, actually you should realize that the courage of a woman to pursue higher education, the courage of a woman to do anything which is unconventional is there in our society. And I just think it's up, for me, it was basically, I studied, and then of course it was my entry into entrepreneurship was by accident. I didn't get a job, so I decided to start my own business. And it was a gender bias that I didn't get a job. So I'm glad that, it made me, it forced me to start my own business and create my own job.
Wow. Again, in the similar line, there is one more question. How did you bring funding to set up your company initially?
It was very difficult. It was very difficult, but I think, I was able to convince, a banker to actually extend a credit line to me. So it was very difficult in the beginning, but I got, once you speak to people, there are people who can actually understand what you're trying to do and they will help you.
Okay. There is one more question from Deepa Dwivedi. Monica Sharma. Analytical abilities of the women are always questioned in science. What is your opinion on that?
My opinion to that is it's rubbish, because look at the satellite engineers that we have today. Do you think Tessie Thomas or any of her team lack analytical skills? Haven't you seen the movie about all the computational skills that were done? All the very tough mathematical computational exercises were done by women. If you have seen that movie Hidden Figures. And they were colored women. So there's even that concept that, colored women can't do this and can't do that. They busted that myth also, right?
Yes.
And you must also know that the word computer originated from a group of women who helped process astronomical data for Edward Charles Pickering, who was the director of the Harvard Observatory in the late 19th century. And he christened them as Harvard computers because they used to compute data.
Endogamy. in Indian social context, endogamy, that is the marrying within your own whatever your caste is. So that endogamy has pushed the women's progress, has stopped the women's progress. Otherwise, you would be competing with the Scandinavian countries, where 60% women are as powerful as men.
Well, we do have societal challenges, but in every society today, you are seeing women do really, really well. I mean, just recently we talked about, there are so many stories, about the young woman from Andhra Pradesh who actually Finland, Norway,
Right.
Taiwan, even Scotland has managed it better
Yes.
than the rest of UK.
Yes.
Yes, so
Yes,
that's
please
what I
go
was
on.
saying. If the number of women scientists increased, maybe even the entire pandemic problem and the vaccine problem would be solved rather quickly.
Well,
With
the
women
vaccine is another challenge, but I'm sure we will all solve it. But let's look at the present pandemic, and the pandemic management is really about testing, tracing, triaging, and treating. So I think unless we do that, we will not be able to manage this pandemic well.
Very
Yeah,
true.
I'm
If I
sorry.
can say, Dr. Kiran, this is Smita. Women are born managers, Dr. Kiran, if I can say that.
Okay, so I will have to take your leave, but thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you
so much, Professor Kiran Mujumdar. You have rightly said that as you become more successful, the gender barriers disappears. The credibility challenges you have during your growing up years starts disappearing when you start demonstrating success. So with your very own example, you have already shown all of us that yes, that statement is absolutely true. And I really, really thank you for giving your thoughtful talk here, your journey, insightful journey through your own experiences. Really, really thank you so much for being here for this webinar. And I'm sure many, many women scientists, early career research scientists and girls are immensely benefited through your talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shalini.